The first time I earned $10,000, my face was pressed against a stained carpet that smelled like old rain and cheaper failure. I had just been fired from a convenience store for being late by 4 minutes. The manager had smiled while doing it, not because 4 minutes mattered, but because he enjoyed watching someone with less power stand there and accept humiliation. That was how the world worked. People pretended talent mattered. They praised hard work when it was already successful. But before success, hard work was just something poor people did while better people laughed. I understood that clearly. I was 22, broke, underweight, and living in a room so small I could reach the sink from my mattress. I had an excellent memory, perfect grades from a college I could no longer afford, and exactly $11 in my bank account. None of those facts impressed the landlord pounding on my door. So I ignored him, lowered myself to the carpet, and decided to do one push-up. Not because I believed exercise would save me. I simply needed to prove that I still controlled something. My money was gone, my job was gone, my reputation had never existed, but my body was mine. Even if it was weak, my arms shook, my chest touched the carpet, I pushed upward. A clear sound rang inside my skull. One valid push-up completed. Reward, $10,000. I stayed frozen at the top. Then my phone vibrated. My banking app showed a new balance of $10,011. Most people would have screamed. Some would have cried. A fool would have done another 100 push-ups without thinking. I did none of those things. I lowered myself slowly and completed a second push-up. The sound returned. One valid push-up completed. Reward, $10,000. My balance became $20,011. That was the moment my old life ended. It was also the moment I began lying to everyone. I did not trust miracles. Miracles were simply systems with rules that had not been discovered yet, so I spent the next 6 hours testing mine. A push-up with bad form earned nothing. A push-up using my knees earned $2,000. A one-handed attempt ended with my face hitting the carpet and no reward because I had failed. Holding the lowest position for 30 seconds earned a small endurance bonus. Completing a push-up while carrying my backpack doubled the payment. Completing one after my muscles were already exhausted increased the reward again. Then I walked 1 mile through the city. Reward, $100,000. I walked a second mile at the same pace. The reward dropped to $98,000. Interesting. The system did not pay me for mindless repetition forever. It rewarded real improvement, real strain, and real difficulty. Easy work became less valuable. Hard work became more valuable. The stronger I became, the more danger I would need to face. There was another reward, even more important than money. 1 hour of focused physical training completed. Permanent improvement applied. Strength, stamina, appearance, health. I felt warmth spread through my bones. My breathing became smoother. The soreness in my shoulders faded. When I looked in the mirror, the change was small but undeniable. My posture was straighter. My skin looked clearer. My eyes looked sharper. The system was not just paying me to become strong. It was turning strength into a machine that created more strength. By sunrise, I had earned $860,000. I slept for 3 hours, woke without fatigue, and smiled at the ceiling. The manager who fired me believed he had taken away my future. In reality, he had removed my final distraction. I needed a place to train where no one would interrupt me, film me, question me, or notice that a skeleton was becoming something else. That led me to the cheapest gym in the city. It sat beneath an abandoned bowling alley and had one flickering sign, 2 broken treadmills, 3 punching bags, and a smell powerful enough to qualify as an enemy. The owner, Marcus, was a huge man with a shaved head, a bad knee, and the relaxed cruelty of someone who had spent 20 years watching weak people quit. He looked me up and down when I entered. Then he looked behind me, as if my real body might be arriving later. "You here for the free trial?" he asked. "No, I want the building locked for 30 days. He laughed so hard he had to hold the counter. I placed $50,000 in cash on the desk. He stopped laughing. That money was not for the building. It was for silence, food deliveries, and the right to train at any hour without questions. Marcus stared at the stacks, then at me, then back at the stacks. People believe money changes minds. It does not. Money reveals which part of a person was already waiting to be purchased. Marcus took the cash. At midnight, he locked the front door from the outside. I was alone with iron. The first day nearly killed me. I ran until my lungs burned. I lifted until my hands split. I did push-ups until the floor looked like it was moving. I hit the heavy bag until my wrists swelled. Every hour, the system improved me permanently. Every completed challenge paid me. Every collapse increased the difficulty of the next attempt. When I could no longer stand, I crawled. When I could no longer crawl, I held a plank. When my body finally stopped responding, I slept beside the squat rack for 43 minutes. Then I woke stronger. By the third day, I could run 10 miles without stopping. By the fifth, I could bench press twice my body weight. By the seventh, my reflection no longer looked familiar. My shoulders had widened. My face had become leaner. The dark circles under my eyes were gone. Every movement felt precise. I did not simply gain muscle. I gained control. I could feel each tendon tighten, each breath enter, each shift in balance before it happened. Marcus opened the door every morning to leave food. At first he mocked me. On day 4 he stopped joking. On day 8 he brought twice as much food. On day 12, he stood in the doorway and watched me sprint on a treadmill that had been broken for years because I had repaired it during a rest interval. "You're not normal," he said. I kept running. Normal is a word weak people use when they want the world to stop changing. He did not speak after that. I kept detailed records in my head. The system favored novelty. It rewarded risk. It reacted to genuine intent. If I pretended something was difficult, nothing happened. If I created a real chance of failure, the reward multiplied. So I began designing better suffering. I wore chains while climbing stairs. I ran with a weighted mask that restricted my breathing. I balanced on one leg while lifting. I turned the lights off and trained by sound. I filled a plastic barrel with ice water and stayed inside while doing resistance exercises with bands anchored to the wall. Each new method raised my payments. 10,000 became 20,000. 100,000 became 500,000. A difficult hour earned millions. Money poured into my accounts so quickly that the numbers stopped feeling real. But money was only stored influence. I had no interest in admiring it. I wanted to know what it could force the world to do. On day 15, I purchased the gym building through a simple direct sale. Marcus stared at the transfer notification on his phone. "You bought the whole place?" "I bought the bowling alley above it too. That place has been empty for 12 years. Then it has had enough rest. I hired crews to work upstairs while I trained below. They did not know who I was. They only knew the mysterious buyer paid triple and wanted everything finished immediately. Walls came down. Steel beams went up. The dead bowling alley became a private training chamber with climbing towers, cold pools, pressure rooms, reinforced floors, and a glass ceiling that could open to the sky. Marcus watched the transformation like a man witnessing a dragon hatch in his basement. By day 20, he had started calling me boss. I told him not to. He called me boss more often. On day 23, the system gave me my first special condition. Growth threshold reached. Basic repetition rewards reduced. Higher rewards available through verified achievement. Suggested targets. Defeat a superior opponent. Break a recognized record. Survive an extreme physical event. I expected this. Infinite wealth from ordinary push-ups would have been convenient, but convenience creates soft people. The system wanted escalation. So did I. I needed an opponent stronger than me. Marcus knew exactly where to find one. Cole was the undefeated professional fighter everyone in the city treated like a natural disaster with sponsorships. He had won championships in 3 weight classes. He had broken a man's jaw with a short hook that barely looked like it moved. He owned sports cars, appeared on giant screens downtown, and had the kind of confidence that only exists when thousands of people have paid to watch you hurt someone. Marcus showed me a video of Cole knocking out a challenger in 11 seconds. I watched it 3 times. The first time I studied his speed. The second time I studied his habits. The third time I studied his pride. His left shoulder rose before he threw the hook. His weight shifted backward when he expected a counter. But the more important detail was what he did after winning. He looked at the nearest camera, not the fallen opponent, not the referee, the camera. Cole did not fight for victory. He fought for witnesses. That made him easy to control. I had Marcus upload a 12-second video. The video showed only my hands tying a pair of cheap training gloves. My face stayed out of frame. At the end, text appeared on the screen. Cole could not survive 1 minute in my gym. No insults, no explanation, no identity. Within an hour, the video had been shared 20,000 times. Within 3 hours, Cole responded. He laughed into a camera and promised to destroy whoever had posted it. Exactly as planned. People thought I was challenging Cole. In reality, I was inviting his pride into a cage. The next day, black cars surrounded my building. Cameras filled the street. Cole entered the gym wearing a white suit and an expression designed for posters. He had brought trainers, security, and a live stream crew. Marcus whispered that we had a problem. I told him the problem had arrived exactly on time. I walked out wearing gray sweatpants and no shirt. The room went silent. 28 days earlier, I had looked like a tired student who apologized when strangers bumped into him. Now every hour of training had carved itself into my body. My muscles were not huge, they were balanced, sharp, and built for movement. The system had improved my appearance along with my strength, which meant I looked less like a bodybuilder and more like someone an artist had designed to make insecurity profitable. Cole's smile tightened for half a second. That was enough. He asked for my name. Adrian. He asked what rules I wanted. 1 minute. You can do anything. I will not strike you. The room erupted. Cole stared at me, waiting for the joke. There was none. My goal was not simply to defeat him. The system required a superior opponent. If I attacked first and ended the fight before he showed his ability, the challenge might not qualify. I needed the world to see him at full power. I needed him angry enough to use everything. So I added one sentence. If you remain standing when the minute ends, I will give you $10 million. Cole removed his jacket. He entered the reinforced training cage. I followed. The timer began. Cole attacked like a missile. His first jab cracked the air beside my face. I moved 1 inch. His second punch passed over my shoulder. I stepped inside his kick, rotated behind him, and returned to the center before he turned around. I did not hit him. That made it worse. He attacked again. I slipped every punch by the smallest possible distance. I leaned beneath a spinning kick and checked the timer while he was still rotating. I stepped onto the cage wall, ran 2 steps sideways, and flipped over him without using my hands. The crowd screamed. Cole's face changed. The performer disappeared. The fighter emerged. Good. He trapped me near the cage and launched the short left hook that had ended careers. I raised 1 finger. His fist struck the tip. The impact cracked the padded floor beneath my feet. My arm did not move. Cole froze. So did everyone watching. The system rang inside my mind. Superior opponents, full power strike neutralized. Special reward multiplier activated. I could have ended it there. Instead, I looked at the timer. 8 seconds remained. Cole roared and charged. I stepped aside, hooked 1 foot behind his ankle, and guided his shoulder with 2 fingers. He flew across the cage, bounced off the wall, and landed on his back as the timer reached 0. Defeat of a superior professional opponent confirmed. Reward, $100 million. Permanent combat adaptation applied. My body changed again. It was subtle from the outside. Inside, it felt like someone had reorganized every lesson I had ever learned. Cole's timing, pressure, balance, and instincts became information my muscles understood. I had not just defeated him. I had absorbed the value of the challenge. The live stream reached 40 million viewers before sunset. The world gave me a new title by morning. They called me the Ghost Athlete because no one could find a record of me competing anywhere. I disliked the name, but names created by crowds were useful. They made people feel ownership, and people defended what they believed they had discovered. Cole returned to the gym alone 3 days later. He did not wear a white suit. He did not bring cameras. He stood in front of me while I performed handstand push-ups on the edge of the roof. He asked how I had done it. I told him the truth. I trained. He hated that answer because it was both honest and impossible. Then he asked for a rematch. I dropped from the roof, turned once in the air, and landed beside him. No. His jaw tightened. You're scared I'll figure you out. I already figured you out. I explained that he had spent years becoming the strongest man in rooms built for fighting. I was becoming the strongest man in any room. Cole should have attacked me. Instead, he asked if he could train at my gym. That was when I realized victory could pay twice, once through the system, once through loyalty. I allowed him to stay, but I gave him one rule. He could challenge me whenever he wanted, and if he ever won, the gym would become his. Cole smiled. He thought I was giving him hope. I was giving myself a renewable source of difficulty. For the next 2 weeks he attacked me without warning. He tried during breakfast. He tried in the pool. He tried while I was hanging from the ceiling by one ankle. Once, he kicked open the door while I was asleep and threw a medicine ball at my head. I caught it without opening my eyes. Every attack forced my instincts to improve. Every failed ambush made him more creative. The system paid smaller combat bonuses, but the real value was adaptation. Marcus found the arrangement hilarious until Cole attacked me while Marcus was carrying soup. After that, Marcus banned surprise fights near food. The gym became famous, even though no one except the three of us was allowed inside. Crowds gathered outside every day. Influencers filmed the walls. Athletes offered money for entry. Companies sent trucks filled with equipment. I accepted the equipment and rejected the companies. Mystery increased demand better than advertising ever could. But one person outside the gym was not cheering. Serena was an investigative reporter with a calm voice, dark eyes, and the irritating habit of noticing details other people ignored. She did not care that I defeated Cole. She cared that I had been photographed leaving a convenience store 1 month earlier with narrow shoulders and a bruised cheek. She found the old footage. She compared my posture, my height, the shape of my hands. Then she began counting. My building purchase, my equipment, my sudden wealth, my physical transformation, my complete lack of athletic history. On the day she appeared outside the gym, she did not ask for an interview. She held up her phone and showed me 2 images. The first was me before the system. The second was me after 30 days. "You're either the greatest fraud alive," she said, "or the most important human being alive." I smiled. Finally, someone interesting had arrived. I invited Serena inside. Marcus nearly swallowed his coffee cup. Cole stopped hitting the heavy bag. For 2 months, I had refused every reporter, athlete, politician, celebrity, and billionaire who approached the building. Then I opened the door for one woman carrying a phone with a cracked corner. I told Serena 2 things. First, I considered her dangerous. Second, I wanted her to know it. She walked through the gym slowly, studying everything without turning her head too much. The climbing wall, the reinforced cage, the cold pool, the weighted cables attached to the ceiling. She noticed the patches in the floor where Cole's body had landed during our rematches. She also noticed the security cameras. I had installed them after her first article, not to record intruders, to record myself. If the system rewarded recognized achievements, then proof mattered. A private miracle was only exercise. A documented miracle became history. Serena asked how much money I had. I don't know. That answer sounds arrogant. It is accurate. She asked how I had changed my body so quickly. Training. She asked whether drugs were involved. No. She asked whether my fight with Cole had been arranged. Cole punched the heavy bag hard enough to tear it from the chain. Serena looked at the bag on the floor. Then she looked at me. I assume that means no. She was clever, but clever people often shared one weakness. They believed every mystery wanted to be solved. That belief made them predictable. Serena could not walk away from an impossible pattern. She would chase it even if I led her somewhere dangerous. So I offered her a test. The city marathon was 12 days away. The course record had stood for 16 years. I told Serena I would break it without using professional shoes, nutrition teams, pace runners, or private coaching. She asked why I would warn her. Because when I do it, I want the person most determined to expose me standing at the finish line. Her eyes narrowed. She thought I was showing off. I was setting a trap. The system had already reduced my normal running reward. 10 miles that once paid nearly $1 million now paid less than a single weighted push-up. I needed a recognized record, but simply running fast was not enough. I wanted 3 separate achievements in one event. Break the marathon record, win after beginning at a disadvantage, complete an extreme strength challenge during the race. For 12 days, I let Serena watch me train. That was the first layer of the trap. I ran slowly whenever she was present. I exaggerated stiffness in my right leg. I allowed my breathing to become loud after long intervals. I even let Cole knock me down during a sparring session where I could see Serena watching from the glass balcony. Cole understood immediately. He was not subtle, but he recognized deception the way a shark recognized blood. He hit me harder than necessary and grinned while I stayed down. Serena left the gym convinced I had reached a limit. Then she published an article predicting I would fail. That was the second layer. Public doubt increased the difficulty because reputation had become part of the challenge. Millions of people now expected me to collapse. Every sports commentator replayed my fight with Cole and called it a lucky trick. Retired runners said muscle would destroy my endurance. Doctors who had never examined me explained why my body could not survive the pace. I listened to every prediction while doing push-ups with Cole standing on my back. Mockery was useful fuel. The world had finally learned how to pay me without knowing it. On race day, 80,000 people filled the streets. I arrived wearing black shorts, a plain shirt, and cheap sneakers from a discount store. The elite runners stared at me like I was an actor who had wandered onto the wrong set. Serena waited near the starting area. She saw the light brace around my right knee and looked almost disappointed. "You really are injured," she said. "No." I removed the brace. Under it, strapped to my leg, was a 50-pound steel weight. The crowd nearby went silent. Then Cole walked forward carrying another one. I strapped it to my left leg. Serena's expression changed. That was when she understood the first deception. I had not been hiding an injury during training. I had been hiding resistance weights beneath my clothes. I had trained every observed step while carrying 100 pounds. The starting signal sounded. I let the elite group disappear ahead of me. For the first mile, I ran at an ordinary pace. People laughed. By mile 3, I was nearly last among the serious competitors. The announcers called my challenge a publicity stunt. Social media filled with clips of me falling behind. Serena followed in a broadcast vehicle, watching my stride through binoculars. I could almost see the calculations happening behind her eyes. Then we reached the first bridge. A construction crane beside the course held a steel beam scheduled for installation after the race. Earlier that morning, Marcus had arranged for the beam to be lowered near the closed lane. No paperwork trick, no hidden rule, just a 10,000-pound object waiting in public. I stopped running. The crowd groaned. I walked to the beam, crouched, and wrapped my hands around the support straps. The crane operator released the tension. For 1 second, 10,000 pounds pressed into my body. The pavement cracked beneath my shoes. Then I stood. The system rang. Public extreme strength feat confirmed. Reward, $250 million. Permanent strength increase applied. I held the beam above my head while the lead runners crossed the far side of the bridge. Cameras zoomed in. I turned toward Serena's vehicle and smiled. Then I lowered the beam, removed the weights from my legs, and began running for real. The effect was absurd. After weeks of resistance training, my legs felt weightless. I crossed the bridge so fast that the camera motorcycle could not keep up. I passed recreational runners like they were standing still. I passed trained competitors before the 10th mile. Each step became longer, smoother, and more powerful as the strength rewards settled into my body. By mile 15, I could see the lead group. By mile 18, they could hear the crowd screaming behind them. By mile 20, I passed them. I did not look exhausted. I looked offended by distance. The final 6 miles became a chase between me and the clock. Police vehicles cleared the road. Helicopters followed overhead. The entire city watched the black-haired stranger who had lifted a steel beam, thrown away 100 pounds of weights, and turned a marathon into a sprint. Serena reached the finish line before me. She stood beside the clock as the numbers changed. I crossed with enough time to shatter the record. Recognized endurance record broken. Reward, $500 million. Permanent stamina increase applied. Public achievement under severe disadvantage confirmed. Bonus reward, $300 million. Permanent recovery increase applied. My heart rate returned to normal before the crowd stopped cheering. I climbed onto the barrier, raised one hand, and let the city lose its mind. That was the flashy part everyone remembered. The important part happened 30 seconds later. Serena approached me with the eyes of someone whose theory had just died. She had believed there was a physical process behind my transformation. An illegal drug, a hidden machine, a scientific team. But no drug explained the beam. No machine explained the speed. No team explained why I looked stronger after the race than before it. She whispered the only correct conclusion. You improve when you do impossible things. I looked into the nearest camera. Then I leaned close enough that only she could hear me. "And you just helped make it impossible." Her article had created doubt. Her presence had verified the achievement. Her skepticism had increased my reward. For the first time, Serena looked afraid of me. Not because I was strong, because I had used her intelligence as training equipment. That night, I bought every building on the block around my gym. The next morning, I began demolishing them. The city expected me to build a luxury tower. Instead, I built the most ridiculous training complex on Earth. A vertical running track wrapped around the outside. A transparent pool hung between two towers. Mechanical arms fired padded projectiles at random. Floors tilted, walls rotated, gravity harnesses pulled athletes in every direction, and a central chamber could simulate heat, cold, wind, altitude, and impact. At the top, I installed a circular arena beneath an opening roof. Marcus called it insane. Cole called it beautiful. Serena called it evidence. I called it home. Crowds gathered every day to watch construction. I allowed them to see everything except the most important room. Beneath the building, surrounded by reinforced concrete, I created a simple black chamber with no machines at all. That was where I thought. Physical power was only useful if the mind controlling it remained ahead. The system improved my health and body, but it did not make decisions for me. That was my advantage. Anyone else given the same ability might have become a champion, a celebrity, or a rich fool surrounded by cars. I wanted something larger. The world was controlled by people who had never been tested physically or mentally. They inherited money, influence, and protection. They sent others into danger and called themselves leaders because danger never reached their doors. I intended to change that, not through speeches, through standards. I announced a public challenge called the Ascension. Anyone could enter the tower. Anyone who reached the top would receive $10 million and the right to challenge me in the arena. There were no forms worth mentioning, no secret tricks, and no complicated rules. The challenge was physical. Run, climb, endure, continue. The tower opened on a Saturday. 10,000 people arrived. 9,000 quit before the third level. The first floor tilted without warning. The second blasted freezing rain. The third required crossing moving platforms while carrying a heavy pack. Above that came rope climbs, heat chambers, balance beams, and a staircase that changed direction while people climbed it. I watched from the top. Most entrants cursed me. Some cried. A few laughed and kept moving. Those were the ones I remembered. Cole entered without telling me. He reached the arena after 6 hours, bleeding from one eyebrow and missing a shoe. The crowd watching online exploded when he stepped through the final door. He had already earned millions from me as the first finisher, but he did not care about the money. He pointed at the center of the arena. I stepped forward. Our rematch lasted 47 seconds. He was faster than before, smarter too. Training beside me had changed him. He feinted the shoulder movement I once used to read his hook, switched levels, and nearly trapped my arm. I escaped by planting one hand on the floor and spinning around him like a compass needle. He laughed in the middle of the fight. Then I flicked his forehead. The controlled force lifted him off his feet and sent him sliding across the arena. He stopped at the edge, stared at the ceiling, and began laughing harder. The system rewarded me for defeating an improved rival. Cole received something more valuable than money. Proof that his limit had moved. The Ascension became a global obsession. People trained just to attempt it. Schools copied safe versions. Athletes argued over the fastest route. Viewers watched strangers push beyond exhaustion and discovered that courage was more entertaining than humiliation. I charged nothing to enter. That confused everyone. They could not understand why a man spending billions on a tower would give away money. Serena understood. The Ascension was not a business. It was a filter. Every person who entered revealed how they handled fear, pain, failure, and temptation. I was building a map of human will. The tower showed me who quit when no one watched, who cheated when a shortcut appeared, who helped strangers even at the cost of time, and who became cruel the moment they believed victory was close. I could learn more about a person in 6 hours of pressure than a company could learn in 6 years of interviews. Serena confronted me in the black chamber. "You're selecting people." "Yes. For what?" "I haven't decided how much of the world I want yet." She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled slightly. It was not friendly. It was the expression of a person who had found the center of a maze and discovered the monster had been waiting there. She began investigating my finances, my purchases, and my past more aggressively. I allowed it. Every good opponent needed the belief that progress was possible. Meanwhile, the system demanded greater challenges. My basic rewards had fallen again. A world record sprint paid less than my first professional fight. The message was clear. I needed danger that could not be rehearsed. So I announced that I would cross the Atlantic Ocean without a boat. The internet spent 2 days arguing about whether I meant swimming. I did not. I meant running. My engineers built floating platforms the size of dinner tables and spaced them across a narrow test section near the coast. Each platform sank when stepped on. To continue moving, I would need to land, launch, and reach the next one before the previous platform disappeared beneath the waves. It was impossible over an ocean. That was why I only needed the first several platforms. The public assumed I was attempting a miracle of speed. Serena assumed I had hidden support beneath the water. Cole assumed I had finally lost my mind. Marcus asked whether he should prepare a rescue boat. I told him to prepare 3. At sunrise, I stood on the beach before millions of live viewers. Storm clouds covered the horizon. Waves struck the first platform hard enough to flip one edge upward. I began running. The first 10 platforms felt easy. The next 10 moved violently. By the 30th, I was hundreds of yards from shore, sprinting over black water while the path vanished behind me. The system recognized the challenge. Extreme unstable surface sprint in open water confirmed. Difficulty multiplier rising. The wind strengthened. I accelerated. At the 50th platform, lightning struck the ocean behind me. At the 60th, a wave swallowed the next 3 platforms. I had expected something like that. I jumped, not toward the missing path, toward the wall of water. I planted one foot against the face of the wave and ran diagonally upward as it curled. For 3 impossible steps, the ocean became my track. At the top, I launched myself into the air, crossed the missing gap, and landed on a platform so hard it split in half. The cameras caught everything. I kept going. The last platform sat 1 mile from shore. When I reached it, no path waited ahead, only the Atlantic. I turned around and saw the platforms behind me sinking one after another. There was no route back. That was not an accident. I had designed the challenge with a point of no return because the system measured genuine risk. Rescue boats raced toward me, but the storm had slowed them. The nearest was still minutes away. The platform beneath me disappeared. I fell into the ocean. Cold water closed over my head. The waves dragged me downward. My shoes became heavy. The current twisted my body. Above me, the surface flashed white with lightning. I did not swim toward the boats. I swam deeper. The world watching believed I was disoriented. Serena knew better. She stood on the lead boat, shouting at the camera crew to keep filming the tracking signal in my wristband. At 100 feet, pressure crushed my chest. At 200, sunlight vanished. At 300, my body screamed for air. I continued downward. The system rang. Extreme depth reached without breathing equipment. Reward multiplier activated. Permanent lung capacity increase applied. The pain eased. I swam deeper. My plan was simple. The surface challenge had trained explosive movement. The depth challenge would train endurance under pressure. I had combined them so neither could be dismissed as staged. At 500 feet, the system rewarded me again. At 700, the tracker signal flickered. At 900, even Serena lost my location. The live audience watched an empty map. For 80 seconds, the world believed I was dead. Then the ocean exploded. I launched from beneath the surface with enough force to rise 20 feet into the air. Water streamed from my body as I twisted above the waves. I landed standing on the bow of the rescue boat. Marcus fainted. Cole screamed with laughter. Serena did neither. She watched my chest rise once, slowly, as if I had taken a short walk. Extreme open water survival confirmed. Reward, $1 billion. Permanent aquatic adaptation applied. Combined challenge bonus, $3 billion. I looked into the nearest camera and brushed wet hair from my eyes. Next time, I said, make the ocean bigger. That sentence spread across the world before the boat reached shore. It also attracted the attention of Grant. Grant was the first rich man I met who did not treat money as an object. He treated it as weather. He owned energy companies, media networks, private arenas, aircraft, islands, and enough influence to make famous people laugh before he finished jokes. He had built his empire by discovering what everyone wanted, then standing between them and it. He did not ask to meet me. He purchased the building across from my tower, removed the roof, and installed a giant chair facing my top floor arena. Then he sat there at sunset, drinking tea, waiting for me to notice. I noticed immediately. I made him wait 3 hours. When I finally crossed the street, I did not use the elevator. I jumped from my roof, cleared the avenue, and landed beside his chair without spilling his tea. Grant looked up at me and smiled. Now I understand why everyone is afraid of you. They are not afraid yet. His smile widened. At last the world had sent me someone who understood ambition. Grant did not offer me money. That would have insulted both of us. He offered me the world's attention. He controlled enough screens, stadiums, and networks to turn a private act into a global event. He said I had power, but power without a stage was only rumor. He could place me in front of every nation at once. Most people would have heard opportunity. I heard containment. A stage has lights, but it also has walls. Grant wanted to define where I performed, when I performed, and what the audience believed they were seeing. He wanted to turn me from an unpredictable force into a product he could schedule. I sat in the chair beside him and looked across the street at my tower. "What do you want?" I asked. "To see where you stop. That is not an answer. It is the only honest answer." Grant explained that the world adored me now because I made the impossible look entertaining. But admiration was unstable. People loved heroes until heroes became judges. They loved strength until strength stopped asking permission. He knew what I was building, not the tower, the idea behind it. I wanted a world where status could be challenged by visible ability, where people born above others could be forced to prove they deserved the height. Grant's entire existence depended on the opposite idea. He believed systems should be controlled from above by the few clever enough to own them. In another life, we might have been allies. That made him more dangerous. He proposed a series of public challenges called the King's Gauntlet. Each challenge would be harder than the last. He would choose the locations. I would choose whether to participate. If I completed all of them, he would publicly recognize me as the most powerful individual alive and hand me control of his international sports network. If I failed, I would give him my tower. Marcus hated the idea. Cole loved it. Serena said nothing, which meant she was thinking harder than both of them. I accepted. Not because I wanted the network. I wanted Grant to spend his imagination trying to hurt me. The system had reached another plateau. Ordinary extremes no longer produced extraordinary growth. Grant had access to environments, machines, athletes, and audiences I would have needed years to assemble. He believed he was building a cage. I intended to use it as a gym. The first challenge took place inside an empty football stadium. Grant filled the field with 1,000 professional athletes from different sports. Fighters, runners, wrestlers, football players, climbers, gymnasts, and strongmen stood between me and a golden bell at the opposite goal line. The rule was simple. Ring the bell within 10 minutes. The athletes were allowed to stop me using any safe physical method. I was not allowed to seriously injure them. The stands were packed. The broadcast reached every major country. Grant sat above the field in a glass room. Serena sat beside him as an independent observer. That was his first move. By placing Serena beside him, he told me he knew she was the person most likely to discover my secret. He wanted me wondering what they had discussed. I did not wonder. I had already planted the answer. 3 days earlier, I allowed Serena to find a set of training notes in the black chamber. The notes suggested my greatest advantage came from maintaining a perfect heart rate. They included false calculations, false recovery limits, and one true detail. Severe vibration disrupted my balance for a fraction of a second. A clever investigator distrusts information that is offered, so I made her steal it. Grant built the first challenge around vibration. Speakers beneath the field released powerful low-frequency pulses. The turf shook in waves. The athletes wore stabilizing boots. I did not. The opening signal sounded. 1,000 bodies moved toward me. I stood still. The front line expected me to charge. The second line prepared to surround me. Climbers waited on raised structures. Fighters guarded the center. Runners spread toward the sidelines to cut off escape. Grant had arranged them like pieces on a board. That was his mistake. People are not pieces. Pieces do not panic. I sprinted backward. The crowd shouted in confusion. The athletes at the front accelerated, believing I had been affected by the vibration. I stumbled once on purpose. The fastest runners separated from the stronger blockers. The formation stretched. Then I changed direction. I ran directly at the sideline wall, planted 3 steps against it, and climbed vertically while moving at full speed. At the top, I grabbed the edge of the lower seating deck and swung over the first wave of athletes. The field formation collapsed as everyone turned. I landed among the middle group. They tried to close around me. I dropped flat, punched the turf with both palms, and used the rebound to launch myself between 2 wrestlers. I touched shoulders, helmets, and backs only long enough to redirect momentum. People spun into one another. Lines folded. The careful formation became a moving maze. I did not overpower 1,000 athletes. I made 1,000 athletes block one another. The vibration continued, but my false notes had created overconfidence. Grant believed the field itself was weakening me. He increased the intensity. That helped. The athletes' stabilizing boots kept their feet steady, but not their vision. The stronger pulses disturbed their inner ears. They began reacting slower. I had trained for 3 days in a spinning room while Cole threw medicine balls at me. My balance had already adapted. I crossed midfield in 40 seconds. Then the strongmen formed a wall. 20 massive bodies locked arms in front of me. I could not injure them. Going through would risk breaking bones. So I went under. I struck the turf with one heel. The reinforced surface split along a maintenance seam I had noticed during the opening ceremony. I hooked my fingers beneath the panel and lifted. A section of the field rose like a drawbridge. The strongman slid backward. I ran beneath the lifted turf, released it behind me, and trapped half the pursuit on the other side without hurting anyone. The crowd became a single roar. At the final 10-yard line, Cole stepped in front of the bell. That surprised everyone except me. Grant had offered him the position privately. He believed Cole's pride would make him betray me for one clean chance at victory. Grant understood pride. He did not understand loyalty created through challenge. Cole attacked with his best combination. I dodged the first punch, blocked the second, and allowed the third to strike my shoulder. The impact spun me toward the bell. I used his force, extended one hand, and rang it with 6 minutes still on the clock. Cole smiled. He had not let me win. He had attacked seriously, because anything less would have insulted both of us. But he also knew I would turn his strongest blow into movement. That was why I trusted him. Trust did not mean expecting someone to act against their nature. Trust meant knowing their nature so well it became reliable. Gauntlet challenge completed. 1,000 elite opponents bypassed without serious injury. Reward, $5 billion. Permanent agility and spatial awareness increase applied. Grant applauded from the glass room. His expression did not change. Serena's did. She looked down at the field, then slowly touched the pocket where she had kept the stolen notes. She understood. I had manipulated her into manipulating Grant. The second challenge began 1 week later in a desert. Grant built a moving fortress the size of a city block. It rolled across the sand on enormous tracks. Its outer walls rotated. Water cannons, heat vents, mechanical arms, and drone swarms defended the interior. At the center, inside a steel chamber, sat a red button. I had to press it before the fortress crossed 50 miles of open desert. The temperature reached 120 degrees. The machine moved at highway speed. I stood alone in the sand as it approached. Most people expected me to leap onto it. Grant expected that too, so I ran away. The fortress followed. Its route had been programmed to pass over a specific line, but its defensive operators could adjust direction to prevent me from boarding. I stayed just ahead, forcing them to accelerate. Sand blasted behind the tracks. Engines roared. The machine consumed fuel faster as it chased me. At 10 miles, Grant ordered the drones forward. I changed pace, letting them surround me. The drones fired nets. I caught one net, wrapped it around my arm and spun. 3 drones collided. I stepped onto a falling drone, used it as a moving platform, and jumped to another. For several seconds, I ran through the air by landing on machines that were trying to capture me. Then I kicked the last drone backward into the fortress's front sensor array. The machine swerved, exactly where I wanted it. A ridge of hard stone rose from the desert floor. Grant's route planners had avoided it because the fortress could climb the ridge, but only by reducing speed. The operators had assumed my goal was to board from behind. I had never intended to. I sprinted up the ridge, reached the top before the fortress, and jumped onto its roof as it passed beneath me. Mechanical arms swung. I moved between them, sometimes bending backward so far my shoulders nearly touched the metal, sometimes jumping from one rotating wall to another. Heat vents fired. I inhaled, held my breath, and ran through waves that could blister skin. The outer hatch sealed before I reached it. I punched beside the hatch, not through the armor, through the hinge. The door dropped outward. I stepped across it as it fell, entered the fortress, and found 300 defenders waiting in narrow corridors. Fighting them would waste time. I ripped a handrail from the wall, jammed it through the floor grating, and struck a moving drive shaft below. The handrail spun violently, hooked my belt, and dragged me through the corridor faster than the defenders could react. I became a human projectile. I released at the final second, flew through a closing blast door, rolled across the command deck, and pressed the red button with my forehead, while both hands were busy stopping my body from crashing into the wall. The entire fortress shut down. Silence spread across the desert. Then the system spoke. High-speed mobile fortress breached. Reward, $8 billion. Permanent heat resistance and reaction speed increase applied. Grant appeared on a screen. He congratulated me. Then he revealed the real challenge. The fortress had stopped on unstable ground above a deep underground cavern. Without engine power, its weight began breaking through the stone. The floor tilted. Alarms sounded. Hundreds of people inside shouted as the machine sank. Grant had hidden an emergency inside of Victory. If I restarted the fortress, I would fail the challenge because the red button had to remain active for 10 minutes. If I left it shut down, everyone inside could fall hundreds of feet. The audience watching saw a cruel choice. I saw a bonus round. I ran to the lowest side of the fortress, tore open the outer wall, and jumped beneath the machine as the ground collapsed. The moving fortress weighed thousands of tons. It dropped toward me. I placed both hands against the underside. For one terrifying second, my knees touched the sand. My bones vibrated. Blood ran from my nose. The system recognized genuine danger and began applying everything I had earned. Strength from the beam, balance from the stadium, endurance from the ocean, heat resistance from the fortress. I pushed upward. The machine stopped falling. Across the world, people stared at screens showing one man holding a fortress above a collapsing cavern. I adjusted my feet and began walking. Each step crushed stone beneath me. I carried the entire machine sideways, away from the broken ground. The defenders inside remained frozen, afraid even to breathe. When I reached stable rock, I lifted harder and flipped the fortress upright. It landed on its tracks with an impact that sent sand into the sky like an explosion. Catastrophic post-challenge events survived. Mass rescue completed through direct physical force. Reward, $20 billion. Permanent maximum strength increased. The red button remained active for 10 minutes. I had completed Grant's challenge and defeated his hidden trap, but I was not smiling. Grant had placed hundreds of lives at risk to test me. He claimed the collapse had been controlled. He said emergency systems would have protected everyone. I knew he was lying. More importantly, Serena knew. She had been inside the fortress. When I tore open the wall, she saw the cavern beneath us. She saw the fear on the operators' faces. No one except Grant had known. That night, she returned to my black chamber. "You knew he would do something after the button," she said. "I knew he would try to make Victory look dangerous. I did not know he would use people." "You use people?" "Yes." The answer surprised her. I had no reason to pretend innocence. I had used her investigation, Cole's pride, Marcus's loyalty, and millions of viewers' doubt. Manipulation was not automatically evil. Every coach manipulated effort. Every leader manipulated attention. Every friend who smiled to comfort someone manipulated emotion. The question was not whether a person influenced others. The question was what happened to them afterward. "When I use people," I said, "they become stronger, richer, or more capable. When Grant uses them, they become shields." Serena looked at me as if searching for the lie. There was one. I had not told her that I enjoyed control. That part would only distract her. She asked what I planned to do. Win. That isn't enough. It will be. The third challenge took place above the city. Grant suspended a glass maze beneath 12 helicopters. The maze hung 5,000 feet in the air. Its rooms shifted, floors opened, walls rotated. To complete it, I had to enter from one helicopter, cross the maze, and reach the exit helicopter while the entire structure moved through a thunderstorm. No parachute, no safety line. Cole called it attempted murder. Marcus called Grant several words I will not repeat. Serena asked me not to go. That was new. Her investigation had started as a hunt. Now she understood that discovering my secret might not be as important as preventing Grant from controlling the result. I told her I had already accepted. She asked whether pride was forcing me forward. Pride is useful when aimed correctly. And where is yours aimed? At the sky. The storm arrived at dusk. The glass maze rose between skyscrapers, flashing with lightning. Helicopters strained against the wind. The city below became a field of tiny lights. I stepped from the first aircraft into the moving structure. The floor vanished. I dropped through 3 levels, caught a rotating wall with one hand, and swung into a narrow passage. Rain blew sideways through open sections. Every glass surface reflected dozens of false routes. Grant had designed the maze to confuse sight. I closed my eyes. The stadium challenge had improved my spatial awareness. The ocean had improved my pressure sense. I could feel the maze moving through changes in air, vibration, and gravity. I ran blind through transparent corridors, while viewers watched from cameras mounted everywhere. Walls closed. I slid beneath them. Floors tilted vertical. I sprinted upward before they completed the turn. A section detached and fell toward the city. I jumped from it at the last instant, caught the edge of the remaining maze, and pulled myself through a window using 2 fingers. Halfway across, lightning struck one of the helicopters. Its engine failed. The maze tilted violently. Grant's announcers called it an accident. I saw the truth in the pattern. The helicopter had been positioned near a grounded cable. The lightning strike had been encouraged. Grant had transformed weather into a weapon while preserving uncertainty. The disabled helicopter began falling, pulling one corner of the maze down with it. The exit moved above me. Glass shattered across the sky. I could have continued toward the remaining aircraft and finished. Instead, I changed direction and ran down the tilting structure toward the falling helicopter. The system rewarded difficulty, but I did not save people only for rewards. That distinction mattered to me, even if no one else understood it. I reached the broken end, jumped into open air, and landed on the helicopter's tail. The aircraft spun toward a skyscraper. I crawled along the body against hurricane wind, reached the rotor assembly, and drove my hand into the damaged housing. Metal tore around my wrist. I gripped the central shaft and used my own body as a brake. The rotor screamed. My shoulder nearly dislocated. The spinning slowed. Then I kicked away from the helicopter and struck the air with both arms as if swimming. Aquatic adaptation was not designed for flight, but air was still a fluid. My movement changed my angle just enough to reach the maze cable. I caught it, swung around, and wrapped it beneath the helicopter. The remaining helicopters pulled upward. The cable tightened. The falling aircraft stopped 30 feet from the skyscraper windows. People inside the building stared at me hanging beneath it with one hand. I waved. Then I climbed the cable, re-entered the maze, and continued. The exit helicopter waited nearly a mile away because the damaged formation had stretched apart. There was no glass path left, only open sky. Grant expected me to surrender. I looked down at the city. Then I ran across the suspension cables. Each cable was thinner than my foot. Rain made them slick. Wind threw them sideways. Lightning flashed close enough to whiten my vision. I sprinted between helicopters while the maze collapsed behind me in shining pieces. At the final gap, the exit aircraft rose suddenly. Grant's last move. The pilot had been ordered to pull away. I jumped anyway. For several seconds, I flew over the city with nothing beneath me. I caught the helicopter's landing rail with one hand. A camera inside captured my face as I pulled myself upward. I was laughing. Aerial shifting maze challenge completed. Multiple emergency rescues confirmed. Reward, $50 billion. Permanent coordination and impact resistance increase applied. I climbed into the helicopter, sat across from the terrified pilot, and looked directly into the live camera. "Grant," I said calmly, "your challenges are getting easier." They were not. But the world did not need to know that. The world needed to see his control weakening, and Grant needed to become angry. Angry people stop hiding the size of their next move. Grant canceled the next challenge. Publicly, he claimed concern for safety. Privately, he began hunting for the source of my power. That was the correct decision. A man who keeps attacking an unknown weapon is not brave. He is generous. Grant gathered scientists, trainers, analysts, magicians, engineers, and former intelligence officers. He purchased every piece of footage showing me before and after the system appeared. He mapped my eating, sleeping, movement, spending, and recovery. He tracked when my strength increased most sharply. Then he noticed the pattern Serena had already found. I improved after difficult physical achievements. The discovery did not frighten me. It pleased me. A secret known by one person is dangerous. A secret partly understood by many can be shaped. So I gave Grant a false rule. I announced that my ability came from public belief. I said the more people doubted me, the stronger I became when I proved them wrong. It was close enough to the truth to survive testing. Public doubt often increased challenge difficulty, and recognition mattered, but belief itself was not the source. Grant accepted the explanation because it fit his worldview. He controlled media. If attention powered me, then he believed he could starve me. Overnight, his network stopped showing my achievements. My name disappeared from sports programs. Clips vanished from major platforms he controlled. Commentators were told to discuss other athletes. The King's Gauntlet was treated as if it had ended. Grant expected me to weaken in silence. Instead, I became louder without speaking. I climbed to the top of my tower at noon, placed one hand against the giant antenna, and bent it into a circle. People filmed from the streets. I jumped from the roof, landed on a moving train, ran across the tops of its cars, then leaped to a river barge without slowing. People filmed from windows. I carried the barge upstream by pulling it with a rope between my teeth. People filmed from bridges. I entered the ascension backward while carrying Marcus in a chair above my head. Marcus waved at cameras and complained that I had not warned him. People filmed from everywhere. Grant controlled networks. He did not control eyes. Every attempt to erase me made ordinary people more eager to record me. My stunts spread through private messages, small channels, live calls, and copied clips. Grant's silence became proof that powerful people feared me. Within a week, I was more famous than before. The system rewarded several new movement records, but the real victory was psychological. Grant had tried to remove the stage. I had turned the whole city into one. Then I attacked his pride. I announced that the King's Gauntlet had failed because its creator lacked imagination. I said the first 3 challenges were impressive by ordinary standards, but ordinary standards no longer applied to me. If Grant wanted to continue, he would need to risk something he valued more than buildings, his reputation. I challenged him to appear beside me during the next event. Not to complete it, simply to stand close enough that he could not pretend the danger was controlled. Serena understood immediately. Grant had built his identity around being untouchable. Refusing would make him look afraid. Accepting would place him inside his own weapon. He chose a volcano. The mountain had been unstable for months. Scientists had created an exclusion zone around it. Grant used helicopters to build a temporary platform above the crater, supported by cables anchored into the rock. At the center of the platform stood a steel throne. His challenge was theatrical. He would sit on the throne while I descended into the crater, retrieved a heat-proof black sphere from a lower ledge, and returned before the platform cables failed. Grant believed the eruption risk was low during the selected window. He believed wrong. The event began under a dark red sky. Ash drifted through the air. The crater glowed beneath us. Grant sat on the throne wearing a heat-resistant suit, still smiling as cameras circled. I wore training pants and shoes. Serena stood inside the command helicopter. Cole and Marcus watched from a distant ridge because I had forbidden them from approaching the crater. The signal sounded. I stepped off the platform. I fell through smoke toward a ledge hundreds of feet below. At the final moment, I struck the crater wall with one foot, ran 3 steps across nearly vertical stone, and caught the ledge. Heat pressed against me like a physical object. My shoes began smoking. The black sphere rested farther down, beyond a river of lava flowing through a narrow channel. The intended route used metal climbing spikes fixed into the rock. I ignored them. Grant had designed the route. Therefore, the route was the most dangerous place to be. I climbed upward instead of down. Viewers thought I was retreating. Grant leaned forward on the throne. Then the climbing spikes exploded. Charges hidden in the rock sent molten fragments across the intended path. Grant had prepared another accident. If I had followed his route, I would have been trapped beneath falling stone. He looked toward the command helicopter, pretending surprise. I looked directly at the camera attached to the crater wall. Then I tapped my temple. Grant's smile disappeared. I crossed the crater by jumping between columns of hot gas bursting from cracks. Each blast lifted me. I timed the eruptions, used the rising air to extend my jumps, and reached the opposite ledge without touching the destroyed root. The sphere sat inside a ring of lava. I plunged both hands into the molten rock. Pain tore through my arms. Even with heat resistance, my skin was not invincible. The system recognized the extreme. Direct high-temperature contact survived. Permanent thermal resistance increasing. I lifted the sphere from the lava. The mountain shook. This time, it was not Grant. A deep sound rolled beneath the crater. The lava level rose. Cracks spread across the platform cables above. The eruption window had changed. Grant stood from the throne. For the first time since I met him, fear erased every performance from his face. The mountain erupted. A column of fire and ash exploded upward. The platform snapped free. Grant fell toward the crater on a slab of steel. The command helicopter pulled away. Cameras spun wildly. The live broadcast became fire, smoke, and screaming. I tucked the sphere beneath one arm and jumped into the eruption. Most people run from explosions. I used one as an elevator. The upward force launched me through ash and burning stone. I passed the falling platform, caught Grant by the back of his suit, and continued rising with him in one hand and the sphere in the other. A boulder larger than a car fell above us. I kicked it. The boulder split into two burning halves that passed on either side. We rose above the crater inside a tower of smoke. Then gravity returned. The command helicopter was too far away. The ridge was farther. Beneath us, the volcano was still erupting. Grant stared at me through his visor. "What now?" he shouted. I almost laughed. The man who built dangers for others had finally asked someone else for a plan. I threw the black sphere toward the ridge. It crossed the sky like a cannonball. Cole ran forward and caught it with both arms, sliding backward through the dirt but remaining upright. Then I grabbed Grant with both hands and spun. I threw him next. His heat suit had a reinforced back and impact padding. He flew screaming across the exclusion zone and landed in a safety net Marcus and Cole pulled between two vehicles. That left me alone above the volcano. I turned downward. I pulled my knees to my chest and dropped like a spear. The system had increased my impact resistance during the aerial maze. It was time to test the limit. I struck the outer slope of the mountain hard enough to create a crater inside the volcano's slope. Rock burst outward. For several seconds, nothing moved. Then my hand rose through the dust. I climbed out, smoking, barefoot and smiling. Active volcanic eruption survived. Target object retrieved. Hostile event predicted and bypassed. One high-value life rescued. Reward: $100 billion. Permanent thermal resistance, durability, and threat perception increased. Grant lay in the safety net, staring at the red sky. I walked toward him carrying one half of the boulder I had kicked apart. I placed it beside his head. The rock was still glowing. "Your challenges," I said, "are finally improving." The clip became the most watched video in human history. Grant's reputation did not survive as well as his body. People saw him fall. They saw me catch him. They saw him ask what came next. The untouchable billionaire had become cargo in another man's hands. He hated me for saving him. That was another kind of victory. But hatred made him dangerous in a new way. Until then, Grant wanted to understand me, own me, or defeat me publicly. After the volcano, he wanted to prove I could bleed. He stopped designing challenges. He designed a weapon. Grant gathered the strongest materials, fastest motors, most advanced sensors, and best combat data available. He built a black exoskeleton taller than a man, powered by compact turbines, and reinforced with layered armor. Its arms could strike with the force of a speeding truck. Its legs could leap over buildings. Its targeting system studied every fight I had ever shown the public. Then he placed Cole inside it. That was not betrayal. Grant did not give him a choice. He trapped Cole inside the machine during what was supposed to be a private test. The armor locked around his body. Neural sensors read his movements and amplified them. Grant's remote system could force the exoskeleton to attack even when Cole resisted. The machine escaped the test facility and headed directly toward my tower. Grant broadcast the attack on every network he controlled. He had learned from his earlier mistake. He did not want silence now. He wanted the entire world to see my friend crush me. The exoskeleton landed in the street like a meteor. Cars bounced, windows shattered, people ran. I stepped from the tower entrance alone. The machine's helmet opened enough for me to see Cole's face. Blood ran from his nose where the sensors pressed against him. He warned me that he could not stop his body. I told him I knew. The machine attacked. Its first punch destroyed the tower entrance behind me. I moved before the sensors finished predicting my position. The second strike split the street. The third released a shockwave that threw parked cars sideways. I did not fight back. Grant expected that. He knew I would avoid hurting Cole. So the exoskeleton increased power. It chased me up the side of my own tower. We ran vertically across glass while people watched from buildings across the city. The machine fired cables from its wrists. I caught one, wrapped it around a support beam, and changed direction. Cole's armored body swung through 3 empty floors. He apologized while crashing through walls. I told him to stop being dramatic. At the roof arena, the exoskeleton landed opposite me. The building's opening roof folded back. Helicopters circled. Grant's face appeared on every screen surrounding the arena. He said the machine had been built for my recorded limits. It could react faster than I had ever moved, hit harder than I had ever lifted, and adapt to every technique I had revealed. That was true. It was also useless. Records described the past. I had trained for 6 hours since the volcano. The machine attacked with Cole's skill and Grant's power. Its fist crossed the arena faster than sound. I caught it. The impact sent a ring of air outward and shattered every screen except the one showing Grant's face. I had protected that screen on purpose. I wanted him watching. The exoskeleton twisted, fired knee strikes, released electric bursts, and launched cables from its back. I moved through the attacks while gripping one armored hand. Each time the machine adjusted, I adjusted first. Grant had trained it on my style. So I used Cole's. I raised my left shoulder before striking. The machine predicted the hook Cole had thrown thousands of times. Its defense moved automatically, but the shoulder rise was a feint. I stepped beneath its guard and tapped the center of the chest armor. The tap sent a controlled vibration through the outer shell without reaching Cole. Bolts burst from the back. Armor plates separated. The exoskeleton's remote system compensated by locking tighter around his body. That was the real danger. If I destroyed the machine carelessly, the collapsing frame could crush him. I needed to remove it without striking him. So I let the machine hit me. Its fist drove me through the arena floor. I fell 5 levels through my tower and landed in the central gravity chamber. The exoskeleton followed. Grant believed he had forced me downward. I had chosen the room. The gravity chamber used directional harnesses and massive magnetic training systems. It could pull weighted objects toward walls, ceilings, or floors. The exoskeleton contained more metal than anything I had ever placed inside. Marcus stood at the control station. He had been waiting. I gave him one signal. He activated every magnet. The machine froze in midair. Its left arm pulled toward one wall. Its right leg pulled toward the ceiling. Its torso twisted toward the floor. The armor fought itself while Cole remained at the center. Grant increased turbine power remotely. I grabbed the exposed frame and ran around the chamber, winding the machine's own cables around the magnetic pillars. Then Marcus reversed the field. The exoskeleton tore open like a metal flower. Cole dropped free. I caught him before he hit the floor. The empty armor continued fighting, remote motors thrashing without a person inside. I threw it upward through the holes we had made in the tower. It passed every level, emerged into the roof arena, and continued into the sky. Then I jumped after it. I caught the exoskeleton above the tower, rotated once, and threw it toward Grant's building across the street. The machine crashed through his giant rooftop chair and embedded itself in the floor beside him. I landed on the broken arm of the chair. Grant stared at the empty armor. His own weapon had returned without its hostage. Forced combat against protected ally completed. Adaptive weapon dismantled without ally injury. Reward, $200 billion. Permanent precision and mechanical awareness increased. I leaned close to Grant. "You built a machine from everything you knew about me," I said. "You should have built it from everything you didn't." For once, Grant had no answer. I returned to my tower carrying Cole over one shoulder. He woke before we reached the medical room and complained that being rescued twice in 1 month was damaging his image. Marcus told him the giant metal flower had already damaged it. Serena arrived minutes later. She did not ask whether Cole was alive. She could see him arguing with Marcus. She asked why I had protected Grant's last screen during the fight. Because I wanted him to see the difference between us. What difference? He needed a machine to control Cole. I only needed to understand him. Serena looked toward the medical room. You say that like understanding someone gives you the right to use them. No, it gives me the ability. And who gives you the right? I looked down through the glass wall at the city. No one had ever given Grant the right to decide which neighborhoods received power, which stories reached millions, or which people entered a deadly fortress. No one had given the old manager the right to measure my worth with 4 minutes. Power rarely waited for permission. The world simply noticed after it was too late. I will, I said. That answer should have made Serena leave. Instead, she stayed. Because she had reached the same conclusion I had. Grant was no longer the main question. I was. 3 days after the exoskeleton attack, I took Grant's sports network without touching a single office. I appeared on the roof of my tower at sunset and announced a global event called the Hour of Proof. For 60 minutes, I would accept any physical challenge sent by the public. The challenge had to be visible, dangerous only to me, and possible to begin immediately within the city. Grant's networks refused to broadcast it. Everyone watched anyway. A firefighter challenged me to climb the tallest tower without using the inside. I ran up the glass while carrying a fire hose, reached the roof, connected the hose to a rooftop tank, and created a waterfall down the side of the building. Then I ran back down through the falling water. A construction crew challenged me to move a crane that had lost power. I climbed the boom, wrapped the cable around my waist, and rotated the entire upper structure by running in a circle across neighboring rooftops. A group of swimmers challenged me to cross the harbor underwater while towing their race platform. I pulled it so quickly that the platform rose above the waves like a speedboat. A pilot challenged me to catch a falling object from 2 miles high. The object was a rubber training ball. I jumped from my tower, landed on the wing of the moving aircraft, took the ball from the pilot's hand, then dropped backward and placed it gently in the firefighter's helmet before touching the ground. The challenges became more ridiculous every minute. Could I perform a push-up beneath a city bus? Yes, I lifted the bus each time my back rose. Could I run across a line of moving motorcycles? Yes, I did it while balancing Marcus on one shoulder because he had made the mistake of laughing. Could I stop a wrecking ball with my forehead? Yes. The wrecking ball swung backward and destroyed the crane's empty control shed. Could I climb a building using only 2 fingers? Yes, I used one. The system rewarded novelty, records, public difficulty, and accumulated fatigue. Each new challenge forced my body to adapt in a different direction. The money became absurd. 5 billion, 12 billion, 30 billion. By the final minute, my net worth had crossed $1 trillion. The last challenge came from Serena. She stood in the empty street beneath my tower, holding no equipment. Her challenge was simple. Do nothing. The audience reacted with confusion. I understood immediately. For 59 minutes, I had controlled every camera by doing something impossible. I had trained the world to expect motion. Serena wanted to know whether I controlled attention or whether attention controlled me. The final 60 seconds began. I stood still. No pose, no smile, no flexing. I simply looked into the camera and allowed silence to spread. The crowd waited. The seconds felt longer than the volcano. My body was ready for another stunt. My mind generated possibilities automatically. I could leap over the tower, lift the street, throw the bus, run into the river. Any movement would satisfy the audience. But it would prove Serena right, so I did nothing. The hour ended. Self-control under maximum public expectation confirmed. Permanent focus increase applied. No financial reward. I smiled. That was the most valuable result of the day. Grant's network lost half its viewers within a week. They went where the spectacle had gone. Athletes abandoned his arenas to attempt the ascension. Commentators who once mocked me began analyzing my breathing. Children copied my one-finger climbing pose on playground walls. Fitness centers around the world built small challenge towers. I did not purchase Grant's network. I made it irrelevant. That was when he disappeared. His building across from mine went dark. His aircraft left the city. His companies continued operating, but no one saw him. Rumors claimed he had retired, escaped, fallen ill, or begun building something underground. I knew better. Grant did not hide because he had given up. He hid because observation had become dangerous. Every time he showed me what he was preparing, I solved it before it began. So I prepared for what I could not see. I trained without patterns. One night, I ran from the city to the mountains while dragging a line of empty train cars. The next, I spent 6 hours beneath a frozen lake, striking the ice from below without breaking it. I practiced catching bullets fired by automated machines, then throwing them into smaller moving targets. I learned to control my strength so precisely that I could crack the shell of an egg without touching the membrane. Cole attacked whenever he sensed I was distracted. Marcus redesigned rooms faster than I could destroy them. Serena watched all of us and wrote less than before. Her silence concerned me. She had stopped trying to expose the source of my ability. Instead, she studied my choices. She tracked which challenges I accepted, which people I rewarded, and which dangers made me angry. One night, she asked me to follow her without cameras. She led me outside the city to an abandoned quarry. A recent collapse had trapped a group of illegal night workers inside a deep tunnel. No news crews knew. No one important was watching. The tunnel owner had fled. The workers' families were waiting behind a barrier while rescue crews struggled with unstable stone. Serena had discovered the collapse through a private message. She did not announce my arrival. She did not record me. She simply looked at the blocked tunnel. This was another test. No public recognition, no obvious reward, no chance to improve my image. Only lives beneath rock. I placed one hand against the ground. Vibrations traveled through my fingers. I could feel hollow spaces, shifting supports, faint impacts from deep underground. Mechanical awareness from the exoskeleton fight had sharpened into something larger. Structures spoke through pressure if I listened carefully. I found the trapped workers. Then I began digging. Not by smashing through the entrance. That would have collapsed the tunnel. I moved to the hillside above them and cut a vertical shaft using controlled strikes. Each punch broke only the stone I selected. I caught falling debris before it reached the cavity below. I reinforced weak sections with steel beams carried from the rescue site. For 40 minutes, I worked in darkness beneath the ground. No crowd cheered. No money appeared. The system gave me small rewards for precision and rescue effort, but I would have continued without them. I reached the trapped workers one by one and carried them upward. The final worker was unconscious. I held him against my chest and climbed the shaft using one hand while the tunnel collapsed below. When I emerged, the families ran forward. Serena stood apart from them. She was watching my face. "You knew I was testing you," she said later. "Yes. And you still came." "Yes. Because you wanted to pass?" I considered lying. Then I decided the truth would disturb her more. Partly. She looked away. People wanted motives to be clean. They wanted heroes who saved others only from pure kindness, and villains who harmed others only from pure cruelty. Reality was less convenient. I saved those workers because they needed help, because the challenge interested me, because Serena was judging me, and because I refused to let a pile of stone deny me. Several motives could exist at once. The result still mattered. Serena asked whether I intended to rule the world. "Not in the way you mean." "What way do I mean?" "A throne, flags, orders. And what way do you mean?" I looked toward the city lights. "I want every powerful person to wake up knowing they can be challenged." She said that sounded like fear. "It is. You think fear will improve them?" "No. I think pressure will reveal them. That was my real goal. A world without tests rewards appearance. A world with visible tests reveals substance. I did not need to sit above everyone. I only needed to make height temporary." Serena did not agree, but she understood. The next morning, the sky changed. A shadow crossed the city at noon. People looked upward and saw a black platform floating above the clouds. It was not an aircraft. It was an artificial island, wider than several stadiums, held aloft by hundreds of engines and enormous gas cells hidden inside armored sections. Towers rose from its surface. Cables hung beneath it. A ring of rotating metal surrounded the outer edge. Every screen in the city turned on. Grant appeared. He looked thinner, calmer, more dangerous. He called the structure Crownfall. For weeks he had built it in secret over the ocean. Then he moved it inland at high altitude, beyond ordinary sight. It now hovered 10 miles above the city. Grant announced the final King's Gauntlet challenge. Crownfall would begin descending in 1 hour. Its engines were arranged so that destroying the wrong section would cause the entire island to tilt and crash. Its outer ring contained automated defenses. Its center held a control column that could safely redirect the platform away from the city. My task was to reach it and activate the column. There was no aircraft waiting to carry me. Grant expected me to find my own way. The challenge was already insane. Then he made it personal. He revealed that he was standing at the center of Crownfall. He would remain there until I arrived. This time he had accepted my demand. He had placed himself inside the danger. The world called it courage. I called it camouflage. Grant did not risk himself without a larger advantage. If he was on Crownfall, then surviving its descent had to be part of his plan. Serena asked what I would do. I looked up at the black shape behind the clouds. Train. We have 1 hour. That's enough. I entered the central chamber of my tower and set every machine to maximum resistance. Cole joined without being asked. Marcus controlled the systems. Serena watched the clock. For 50 minutes I trained harder than I ever had. The floor pulled downward with crushing force. Mechanical arms struck from every side. Heat and cold alternated. Water flooded the room, then drained. Coal attacked through all of it. I carried steel blocks while sprinting along rotating walls. I held my breath while dodging projectiles. I allowed the machines to tear muscle fibers, then forced the system's permanent health improvement to rebuild them stronger. Each completed hour had always improved me. This hour was compressed into violence. At 58 minutes, I could feel Crownfall's engines through the tower floor. At 59, the shadow expanded. At 60, I stopped training. The system rang. Extreme multi-environment training hour completed. Permanent total body improvement applied. Crownfall began descending. I walked to the roof. There were no helicopters close enough. No mountain high enough. No cable reaching down. Only sky. Cole asked whether I could jump 10 miles. No. Marcus asked whether that was a problem. No. I crouched at the edge of the arena. Then I jumped downward. Everyone watching expected me to go up. I dropped through the center of my tower, falling past level after level. Magnetic systems accelerated me. Directional harnesses pulled. The gravity chamber added force. I fell faster and faster until the air around me screamed. At the bottom, I struck a curved launch platform designed during Crownfall's final hour. The platform bent under the impact and returned every bit of downward force upward. I changed direction. I shot through the center of the tower like a bullet through a barrel. I passed the roof. I passed the tallest buildings. I passed the helicopters circling the city. Clouds exploded around me. For several seconds I rose toward Crownfall with my arms at my sides, calm enough to watch the city shrink beneath my feet. Then the upward force faded. The floating island was still miles above. Grant had calculated my likely jump range. He had positioned Crownfall higher. I smiled. A weather aircraft circled nearby, collecting storm data. I twisted through the air, landed on its upper wing, ran across the body, and jumped again. The pilot never understood what happened. The second jump carried me to a defense drone descending from Crownfall. I caught it, redirected its engines, and rode it upward like a metal surfboard. More drones attacked. I jumped from one to another, using their own flight paths as stairs. Missiles streaked past. I slapped one sideways into a rotating cannon. I caught another under my arm, waited until it accelerated, then used its thrust to cross the final gap. I reached Crownfall 7 minutes after it began descending. The city below cheered. Grant did not. He had expected me to arrive. The real gauntlet was waiting on top. The surface of Crownfall looked like a city designed by someone who hated gravity. Buildings leaned at impossible angles. Roads curved upward into walls. Rotating rings moved around towers. Engines fired beneath transparent floors, showing open sky and the city far below. At the center, a black control column rose like a needle. Grant stood on a platform near it. Between us waited every lesson he had learned from me. The first defense was distance. The outer ring accelerated until its metal surface moved faster than a train. I landed on it and immediately had to run just to avoid being thrown into the sky. Turrets tracked my movement. Drones closed from above. Sections of the ring tilted without warning. Grant expected me to move inward as quickly as possible. Instead, I ran outward against the rotation. The turrets adjusted. The drones followed. Their targeting systems predicted that I would eventually turn toward the center. I did not. I completed an entire lap around Crownfall, increasing speed until I matched the rotating ring. Then I jumped onto the back of a turret, tore it from its mount, and used its firing recoil to launch myself across the surface. The turret fired beneath my feet. Each blast pushed me farther. I surfed a cannon through the air while drones chased me in formation. At the right moment, I flipped backward, kicked the turret into the drones, and landed on the side of a leaning tower. The tower began rotating. Mechanical panels opened, releasing hundreds of steel spheres. Each sphere weighed several tons. They rolled down the tilted walls toward me. Grant had seen me lift objects. He wanted to bury me beneath too many to lift. I ran toward them. The first sphere reached me at lethal speed. I struck it slightly off-center. It changed direction and collided with the next. That collision redirected two more. Within seconds, the tower became a giant game of controlled impacts. Spheres crashed into one another, changed lanes, and rolled past me. I moved between them with inches to spare, sometimes stepping on one and running across its curved surface, sometimes using one as a shield against another. I never stopped climbing. At the top, the tower snapped sideways. It had not been anchored. The entire structure fell toward the outer edge of Crownfall. I ran down its collapsing length, reached the tip before it passed the island, and jumped toward the next section. Grant detonated the tower behind me. The blast caught my back. I crossed half a mile of open air inside a cloud of fire and landed through the roof of a white chamber. The floor sealed above me. The walls were smooth, bright, and empty. Then pressure increased. Grant had built a compression room. The air became heavy. My ears rang. The force rose far beyond deep ocean pressure, squeezing from every direction. At the same time, the chamber began spinning. A normal body would have been crushed. Mine bent. Bones shifted slightly. Muscles compressed. The permanent health improvements protected my organs. But Grant had calculated from the ocean challenge and added more pressure than I had endured. Blood appeared in my vision. The system recognized the extreme. Artificial pressure beyond previous survival limit. Difficulty multiplier activated. I placed both palms against the walls. Grant expected me to break outward. I pushed inward. The opposite walls bent toward each other. The chamber's shape changed from a cylinder into a narrow oval. That reduced the volume and increased the pressure even more. It looked suicidal. It was training. I held the position until my body adapted. Permanent pressure resistance increasing. Then I released. The bent walls snapped back. The returning force launched a shockwave through the chamber. Every seal burst at once. Air exploded outward, tearing the room open. I stepped through the wreckage stronger than when I entered. Grant watched from the center. He understood what I had done. His trap had not delayed me. It had upgraded me. That was when Crownfall changed shape. Entire districts rotated. Towers folded into the ground. Roads rose into vertical blades. The island became a massive machine rearranging itself around my position. Grant was no longer testing isolated abilities. He was forcing constant adaptation. I ran. A street folded upward beneath my feet and became a wall. I continued across it. The wall curved overhead and became a ceiling. I ran upside down while engines fired below. When gravity pulled me away, I jumped to a rotating bridge, slid along its underside, and caught a hanging chain. The chain was attached to a counterweight the size of a house. I swung it around the island. Defense machines approached from every direction. I released the counterweight at the highest point. It crashed through 3 towers, cleared a path, and continued off the edge. Crownfall tilted. The city below shifted into view. The platform had descended to 5 miles. I had less than 20 minutes before impact. Grant's machines came next. Not 1 exoskeleton, 100. They arose from armored bays, each built around a different fighting style. Some were fast and narrow, some were enormous. Some moved on 4 legs. Some carried rotating shields or impact hammers. Their systems shared information instantly. The first charged. I punched through its chest. The remaining machines adjusted armor placement. The second attacked low. I jumped, caught its head, and used it to strike the third. The remaining machines adjusted distance. Within seconds, they were learning from every loss, so I stopped giving them useful losses. I allowed 1 machine to grab me. Others surrounded us, recording the successful pattern. I went limp for half a second, letting them classify the hold as effective. Then I flexed. The machine around me shattered. I caught its central power unit before it fell and threw it into the next machine. The unit overloaded on impact. Electricity jumped through their shared communication links. For one instant, all 100 machines received the same false signal. Target located its central platform. They turned away from me. They charged Grant. His control systems fought to correct the error. Machines collided, blocked one another, and attacked defensive walls around the central column. I ran behind them, using his army as a battering ram. Grant abandoned his platform and entered the column. The outer doors began closing. I threw one exoskeleton through the gap and jammed them open. Then the island dropped. Every engine shut down at once. Crownfall fell thousands of feet. Machines, debris, and broken towers rose into the air relative to the platform. I became weightless inside a storm of metal. Below, the city expanded rapidly. Grant had hidden a freefall phase. The control column remained at the center, but reaching it now required moving without stable ground. Good. I had not trained enough in zero gravity. I kicked away from a floating machine, crossed open space, grabbed a rotating beam, and threw it behind me to change direction. I moved by exchanging momentum with debris. Every object became a step if I released it correctly. The system rewarded the new environment. Zero gravity combat traversal confirmed. Permanent aerial control increasing. Defense machines adapted and fired thrusters. I let them chase. A missile passed beneath my arm. I caught its tail, rotated with it, and used it to accelerate toward the control column. 3 machines blocked the path. I released the missile. They scattered. I passed between them. The island's engines restarted. Gravity slammed everything down. Thousands of tons of debris crashed onto Crownfall. I landed on the control column feet first. The top cracked. I dropped inside. Grant waited in a circular chamber surrounded by screens. He wore no exoskeleton, no armor, just a dark suit and the same calm expression he had worn when we first met. A red lever stood between us. Pulling it would redirect Crownfall over the ocean and lock the engines into a safe descent. At least, that was what every public diagram claimed. I did not touch it. Grant smiled. You finally learned caution. I learned you. I walked around the lever. The control chamber vibrated. Crownfall continued falling toward the city, now less than 3 miles above it. Grant said the lever was real. He said I could save millions with one movement. I asked why he had not pulled it himself. He claimed it would only activate through a force pattern based on my strength. That was possible. Sensors could have been calibrated to my recorded output. It was also irrelevant. Grant had not brought me here to perform a task he could not complete. He brought me here to make a choice he wanted seen. I looked at the screens. Every camera focused on the lever, not Grant. Not the falling city, the lever. That revealed the trick. The public had been told pulling it would save Crownfall. Grant wanted the world watching the exact instant I touched it. Therefore, the movement would produce something visually important. An explosion, a collapse, a change that could be blamed on me. I grabbed Grant instead. His calm finally broke. I lifted him by the front of his suit and pressed his hand toward the lever. He pulled away with real panic. Confirmation. I released him. What does it do? I asked. He said nothing. So I placed one finger against the lever and applied just enough pressure to activate its first sensor without moving it. The screens changed. A hidden diagram appeared for less than a second. My enhanced focus captured everything. The lever would not redirect Crownfall. It would separate the central core from the outer platform. The core contained Grant's escape system. The outer platform would lose stabilization and break apart above the city. Cameras would show me pulling the lever moments before destruction. Grant would survive at sea. I would save some people, fail to save others, and become the man who shattered a floating island over millions. Grant had not built a final challenge. He had built a final image. That was his true weapon. He believed reputation mattered more than truth because people could only react to what they saw. He was almost correct. I turned toward the nearest camera, then I crushed it. One by one, I destroyed every camera in the control chamber. Grant laughed. He said that without footage, no one would know what happened. His networks would tell the story for me. I know, I said. Then Serena's voice came through the speakers. Grant froze. She had entered his broadcast system hours earlier using access I deliberately allowed him to believe she had stolen from me. While he focused every camera on the lever, Serena redirected several maintenance feeds to the public. The world had just seen the hidden diagram. They had seen Grant refuse to touch the lever. They had seen his escape plan. Grant looked at me with something beyond anger. Recognition. The same trick I used with Serena before the marathon had returned at a larger scale. I had allowed an investigator to appear independent, allowed Grant to believe he could use her suspicion, and waited until he trusted the conflict between us. He never understood that Serena and I did not need to trust each other completely. We only needed to understand what the other would refuse to permit. Crownfall dropped below 2 miles. Exposing Grant was not enough. The island still had to be stopped. I struck the floor and listened to the vibration. The control column connected to the main engine spine beneath us. Hundreds of turbines surrounded it. No single control could redirect the structure safely because Grant had designed the system to require separation. So I created a new control. I tore the red lever from its base, drove it through the floor, and hooked it beneath the central support shaft. Then I lifted. The entire control column rose. Metal screamed around us. Grant fell backward. The shaft beneath the chamber bent upward, changing the angle of connected engine mounts. Across Crownfall, turbines began pointing away from the city. But not enough. I lifted harder. The column weighed thousands of tons. It was attached to nearly everything. Raising it meant bending the skeleton of the island while it fell. My feet broke through the floor. My arms shook for the first time since the fortress. The system recognized the scale. Direct structural redirection of airborne megastructure. Maximum difficulty multiplier activated. Permanent strength increasing under load. I continued lifting. The control column tore free from one support, then another. Engines rotated outward. Crownfall began drifting west. Grant crawled toward a small escape hatch. I caught his ankle without releasing the column. He kicked, shouted, and promised that the island would break apart. Then help. He stared at me. I placed his hands against the lever beside mine. Grant was not strong enough to matter physically. But the image mattered. Serena's maintenance feed showed the world the man who built Crownfall being forced to help move it away from the city. He pushed because he had no other choice. The island turned. Its shadow slid across the streets. Crownfall passed the edge of the city with less than 500 feet to spare. Buildings shook from the engines. Windows burst. Cars lifted slightly from the road. But the platform cleared the last district and moved over the river toward open land. Then the supports failed. The control column broke loose. Grant and I were thrown upward as Crownfall tilted on its side. The city was safe. The people on Crownfall were not. Thousands of operators, engineers, pilots, and security workers remained inside the outer sections. Most had believed Grant's escape system would protect them. Now the island was rolling toward the ground beyond the river. I had seconds. I threw Grant into the control column's emergency capsule and closed it around him. He screamed the capsule was meant for him alone. I know. Then I kicked it toward the river. The capsule's parachutes opened. Grant drifted away, trapped inside his own survival plan while cameras followed. I jumped from the central chamber onto the rotating surface of Crownfall. The island had become a falling wall. I ran across it while towers broke loose around me. I tore open occupied sections and threw emergency pods toward the water. I caught falling workers and placed them inside. I kicked large debris away from smaller aircraft. I redirected fuel tanks before they exploded. Every second required a different calculation. Cole arrived in a stolen defense aircraft. Of course he did. He flew beneath the island, catching pods on the aircraft's cargo net. Marcus guided him from the tower using the remaining tracking signals. Serena stayed connected to Crownfall's speakers, directing people towards sections I had cleared. The four of us turned Grant's weapon into a rescue operation, but Crownfall was too large. Even after the last occupied module separated, the central mass would strike the ground with enough force to destroy everything for miles. I stood on the lowest edge as it fell. Open land rushed upward. The system displayed no suggestion, no rule, no answer. Good. I preferred my own. I jumped beneath Crownfall. I placed both hands against the island, and I pushed. Crownfall did not stop. Of course it did not stop. A falling island does not care how dramatic a person looks beneath it. Its weight drove me downward. Air exploded around my body. My shoulders screamed. My feet pointed toward the ground while both hands pressed against a black metal surface wider than a neighborhood. For the first second, I changed nothing. For the second, I slowed it by an amount too small for any camera to measure. For the third, the bones in my arms began to crack. The system rang again and again. Catastrophic load sustained. Maximum strength increasing. Maximum durability increasing. Maximum recovery increasing. Each improvement arrived while the challenge continued. My body broke and rebuilt under the same pressure. Muscle tore, strengthened, and tore again. Blood ran from my mouth, curved upward in the rushing air, and splashed against the island above me. The ground was less than 2,000 feet away. I changed my grip. That tiny movement shifted the entire island 1 degree. 1 degree was enough. Crownfall began rotating away from the remaining buildings near the river. Its lowest edge moved toward an empty quarry, but slowing it was still impossible with raw force alone. So I stopped trying to hold all of it. Grant had built Crownfall from connected sections. Towers, engines, armor, gas cells, fuel chambers, and structural rings transferred force through one central frame. I could feel those connections through my hands. Mechanical awareness turned the island into a map of pressure. I found the strongest line. Then I punched it. The strike traveled through Crownfall's frame like thunder through a bell. Support joints released in a precise sequence. Outer sections folded inward instead of breaking outward. The wide island compressed around its central spine. Crownfall became smaller, not light, not safe, smaller. I moved beneath the new center of mass and pushed again. The island slowed. 1,000 feet. My left arm bent backward. I forced it straight. 800 feet. The outer ring struck the ground first, carving a trench across the quarry. The impact threw me sideways. Crownfall rolled over me like a collapsing mountain. I ran beneath it, hands and feet striking the moving underside. Every step redirected part of the rotation. Every punch collapsed an empty section to absorb force. 600 feet. 400. The compressed island filled my vision. I planted both feet against a stone wall at the edge of the quarry. The wall cracked behind me. I pushed with everything the system had ever given me. Every push-up on the stained carpet. Every mile through the city. Every hour in the locked gym, every punch from Cole, every trap from Grant, every doubt Serena created, every impossible object I had lifted because someone believed I could not. The falling island stopped. For half a heartbeat, Crownfall hovered above the quarry in my hands. The world went silent. Then I threw it. Not far. Just upward and sideways enough to clear myself. Crownfall rose, rotated once, and landed in the quarry with its hollow center facing the sky. The impact sent a circular wall of dust over the river. Trees bent. Water jumped from the banks. Every remaining window in the abandoned industrial zone shattered at once, but the city remained standing. I remained standing too. Barely. My arms hung at my sides. My skin was covered in cuts and ash. One knee touched the ground. It was the first time the public had seen me kneel. The cameras zoomed in. People waited for me to collapse. I looked at the enormous wreckage behind me. Then I lowered myself onto both hands. I performed one push-up. The system sounded clearer than ever. One valid push-up completed under post-catastrophic total body failure. Reward, $10 billion. I laughed. The first push-up had paid 10,000. This one paid 10 billion. The amount was ridiculous, but the message mattered more. The movement had never changed. I had. Crownfall megastructure diverted from populated area. Mass rescue completed. Fatal impact prevented through direct force and structural control. Final King's Gauntlet challenge completed. Reward, $1 trillion. Permanent total physical capacity increased. Special achievement unlocked. Force beyond existing measurement standards. No crowd could hear the system. They did not need to. They watched me stand. The sound that followed traveled across the river, through the city, and into every broadcast in the world. People shouted from streets, roofs, apartments, hospitals, gyms, schools, and control rooms. They had watched a falling island disappear behind dust. Then they saw one figure walk out. Cole landed the defense aircraft badly enough to remove one wing. He climbed from the wreck and ran toward me. Marcus arrived in a rescue vehicle that had once been a luxury truck before he filled it with tools and emergency food. Serena came from a helicopter, holding a camera she had forgotten to turn off. Cole looked at Crownfall, then at me. He asked whether I had thrown it. I said yes. He called me a liar. Marcus pointed to the handprints crushed into the underside of the wreckage. Cole stopped talking. Serena approached last. She studied my broken skin, shaking hands, and perfectly steady eyes. "You almost died," she said. "Almost as a measurement of failure. You were 1 second from being crushed. Then I had 1 second too many." She wanted to argue, but alarms sounded near the river. Grant's escape capsule had landed. We found him trapped inside, hanging from a tree by the parachute lines. The capsule door had jammed. His expensive suit was torn. His face was covered in dust. A crowd gathered below while cameras surrounded him. He had designed the capsule to place him gently on a private ship at sea. Instead, the redirected island changed his path and dropped him into public view. I tore the door off. Grant climbed out slowly. For the first time, no one stepped aside for him. The crowd did not see an untouchable ruler of industries. They saw the man who built Crownfall, hid an escape system, endangered a city, and was saved by the person he tried to destroy. Grant looked at the faces around him. Then he looked at me. "He said I had won." "I won before Crownfall moved over the city," I replied. He asked when. "When you decided the world had to watch." That was the truth. Grant's greatest strength had always been control of attention. He believed people only understood reality through a chosen image. But to destroy me publicly, he needed a public large enough to notice him too. He placed himself in the center of every camera and called it strategy. The audience that made his trap powerful also made his defeat permanent. He asked what I would take. The sports network. His arenas. His island. His companies. His fortune. He assumed victory meant ownership, because ownership was the only language he respected. "I already took what mattered," I said. He looked toward the crowd. His reputation, his certainty, his position above challenge. All gone. I could have ruined the rest of his life. I had enough money to purchase every object he loved and turn each one into gym equipment. I had enough influence to make his name disappear from every screen. I had enough strength to carry him to the top of my tower and throw him into another country. Instead, I gave him one path. He could enter the ascension, no special entrance, no private route, no machine. He would begin at the first floor beside everyone else. If he reached the top, I would meet him in the arena. The crowd laughed. Grant did not. He understood the punishment. I had reduced the man who placed himself above the world to a challenger standing at ground level. He walked away without answering. I knew he would return. Pride does not disappear when defeated. It either breaks or begins training. The days after Crownfall changed everything. Cities asked for ascension towers. Athletes demanded harder versions. Engineers studied the wreckage. Scientists argued over the force required to stop the island. Financial experts tried to calculate my wealth and gave up when the numbers changed during live training. I purchased the ruined industrial zone beside the river and turned Crownfall's remains into a public challenge park. The outer ring became a running track. The leaning towers became climbing courses. The pressure chamber became a safe training simulator. The mechanical army was melted into weights. Grant had spent billions building a weapon. I turned it into a gym. That transformation damaged him more than destruction would have. The hour of proof became a weekly event, but I no longer completed every challenge myself. People who climbed the ascension could choose public tests. Champions defended records. Unknown workers defeated famous athletes. A grandmother carried twice her body weight up 50 stairs and became more popular than a movie star. A teenager crossed a balance course everyone said was impossible and earned enough money from my prize to move his family into a safe home. I watched from the top. The system did not pay me when others improved. It did not need to. Their progress changed the world around me. Stronger rivals created harder future challenges. Braver crowds demanded greater proof. Every person who exceeded a limit raised the standard I would eventually have to defeat. I was building my own opposition. That was either genius or arrogance. The difference would be decided later. Cole became the first official defender of the top arena. Anyone who completed the tower had to face him before reaching me. He loved the position because thousands of talented fighters arrived believing they could surprise him. Most left unconscious but inspired. He improved quickly. One evening, he attacked me from behind while I watched the sunset. His kick touched my cheek. It was the first clean strike he had landed in months. He celebrated for 3 full seconds. Then I threw him into the transparent pool between the towers. He climbed out smiling. The system awarded me nothing. That made me smile too. Cole was becoming a real challenge again. Marcus controlled the training complex with the authority of a general and the clothing of a man who had lost an argument with a laundry basket. He rejected rich visitors who acted disrespectfully, welcomed exhausted beginners, and installed a kitchen on every 10th floor because he still remembered the soup incident. He also kept the original basement gym untouched. The stained floor remained. The broken bag remained. Even the old counter where I placed $50,000 remained. When the tower became too loud, I trained there alone. The basement reminded me that power could begin in a room no one respected. Serena became the only person allowed to enter the black chamber without permission. She did not work for me. That was important to both of us. She published investigations into my challenges, my influence, and my methods. Sometimes her reports made me look heroic. Sometimes they made me look terrifying. She refused to let the world treat my strength as proof that every decision I made was correct. I allowed it because admiration without resistance becomes worship, and worship is intellectually useless. She believed she was protecting the world from me. She was also protecting me from boredom. One night, she placed a folder on the black table. Inside were photographs of people training at Ascension Towers around the world. Soldiers, athletes, rescue workers, climbers, fighters, and ordinary citizens. Some had begun performing feats that should have required years of preparation. Records were falling every week. Human performance was rising faster than experts could explain through motivation alone. Serena asked whether my system was affecting them. I did not answer immediately. I had wondered the same thing. The system never spoke about anyone else. It did not chase me, threaten me, or explain itself. It simply rewarded my improvement. But the world I created was applying pressure to everyone. Better equipment, better challenges, public rewards, visible examples, and the belief that impossible things could be done were changing behavior. Perhaps no magic was needed. Perhaps watching a man run across the ocean made ordinary limits feel less official. Serena pointed to one photograph. A group of climbers had built an unofficial tower from the wreckage of an old bridge. Their best competitor reached the top in a time that would have beaten Cole's first ascension run. I felt something I had not felt since the day Cole entered my gym. Anticipation. The world was producing opponents without my permission. Good. I told Serena to publish everything. She asked whether I was worried. No, you should be. Someone will eventually become strong enough to challenge you. That is the point. She studied me. You really mean that? I have never wanted weak followers. What do you want? Strong enemies. That answer spread after she included it in her report. The response was immediate. Training clubs formed with the single goal of reaching my arena. Famous champions stopped competing against one another and began preparing for the ascension. Extreme athletes built courses in deserts, jungles, mountains, and frozen seas. Inventors created new resistance machines. Cities held public trials to select their strongest challengers. Every mockery from my old life had been replaced by a dare from the future. I became richer every time I accepted one. I became stronger every time one nearly stopped me. And I became more dangerous every time someone assumed raw force was the only thing growing. 6 months after the first push-up, my body no longer fit any normal category. I could run faster than aircraft during takeoff. I could remain underwater for hours. I could survive heat that melted steel, pressure that crushed machines, and impacts that changed landscapes. My appearance had become so unnaturally balanced that companies offered billions simply to scan my face for digital models. I refused. Mystery remained useful. My wealth exceeded the economies of several nations, though I rarely looked at the total. Money moved around me like electricity. I used it to build challenge centers, rescue systems, research facilities, and training environments. I did not donate from guilt. I invested in a harder world. A harder world would create people capable of surprising me. That was the only luxury I valued. Grant returned on the final day of the 6th month. He arrived at the Ascension before dawn wearing plain training clothes. No cameras followed him. No security surrounded him. He stood in the public line beside construction workers, students, retired athletes, and people who had traveled across oceans for one attempt. Marcus saw him through the entrance camera and asked whether he should remove him. No. Cole asked whether he could fight him on the first floor. No. Serena watched Grant begin the course. He struggled immediately. The tilting floor threw him against a wall. The freezing rain slowed him. The weighted pack nearly pulled him backward from the moving platforms. People passed him. Some recognized him. No one helped at first. Then one exhausted stranger reached back and pulled him over a gap. Grant stared at the offered hand as if it were a weapon he did not understand. He accepted it. Hours passed. He reached the 10th floor, then the 20th. At the heat chamber, he collapsed. He crawled forward. At the rotating staircase, he vomited and continued. At the climbing wall, his hands bled. The man who once sat above my arena in a giant chair now moved upward one painful step at a time, while no one adjusted the challenge for him. The public discovered his attempt after sunrise. Cameras gathered outside, but the interior feeds remained equal for everyone. Grant received no special angle. Sometimes he disappeared behind stronger climbers. Sometimes the screen showed him lying on the floor, while strangers stepped around him. He did not quit. By sunset, he reached the final arena. Cole waited there. Grant could barely stand. Cole asked whether he wanted to surrender. Grant raised his fists. The fight lasted 4 seconds. Cole tapped him in the chest. Grant fell. He remained on the floor, staring upward. Then he laughed once. Not the controlled laugh from his rooftop chair. Not the laugh of a man arranging someone else's danger. A tired, surprised laugh. He had lost, but the loss belonged to him. No machine had moved for him. No employee had taken the impact. No escape capsule had waited. He had finally completed something difficult enough to change him. Cole offered a hand. Grant accepted it. The system gave me no reward. I watched from behind the arena glass and felt satisfied anyway. Grant did not reach me that day, but he promised to return. For the first time, I believed him without calculating how the promise served his image. That should have been the end. The broke man everyone ignored had become the strongest and wealthiest person alive. The champion who tried to crush me became my best rival. The owner who laughed at my body became the guardian of my tower. The investigator who wanted to expose me became the blade held near my judgment. The billionaire who built a falling island to destroy me entered my gym as an ordinary challenger. The city stood. Crownfall had become a monument to my victory. The ascension had become a global standard. For one quiet evening, everything was exactly where I wanted it. Then the object appeared above the moon. It was visible through telescopes first, a long silver structure moving out from the dark side, far larger than any known station. It did not approach Earth. It remained in lunar orbit. A signal reached every major broadcast system. No voice spoke. No person appeared. Only an image. A circular arena built on the moon's surface. At its center stood a black flag. Beneath the image was a distance, 238,900 miles. Then a challenge appeared. Reach the flag. Cole saw the message from the arena and began laughing before anyone said a word. Marcus looked at the moon, looked at me, and said the kitchen was not delivering that far. Serena studied the signal and warned that it could be a trap. Obviously, I said. She asked whether I was actually considering it. I walked to the roof. The city glittered below. Ascension towers shone in the distance. Crownfall's broken rings circled the quarry like a crown left on the ground. Thousands of people trained through the night because I had taught them that limits were invitations written by weaker versions of themselves. Above all of it, the moon waited. 6 months earlier, one push-up had given me $10,000. Since then, every test had made me richer, stronger, healthier, faster, and harder to stop. The world had mocked me, studied me, attacked me, worshipped me, feared me, and finally begun chasing me. But Earth was running out of room. I removed my jacket. Serena asked what I was doing. Calculating. Cole asked whether I could jump to the moon. Not yet. Marcus groaned because he understood what that meant. I lowered myself onto the roof and placed both hands against the concrete. The first push-up had changed my life. The next one would begin changing the distance between worlds. I smiled at the moon, pushed upward, and waited for the system to tell me how much impossible was worth now.